Hello, everyone. Welcome at our core protocol sync. We'll share updates on the core protocol from last week and plans for the future from our smaller protocol engineering team. Lucian, you'll start first today.
Okay, sure. Let me share my screen. Oops. Error occurred again. So actually, last week the work was like fairly easy to understand that it was to like merge the subspace executable into the subspace node executable. Actually, if you look at, I'll just share the link. I'll just share the link in the room. Okay. It can be pretty easy to look at this diff. Like previously, we have an additional binary subspace executor. Now we don't have that. It's no longer exists, and we just run the subspace node with extra arguments followed by dash at the end of the typical primary chain arguments. Yeah, then you can just run an primary node with the executor functionality. So initially, my thoughts, like my understanding of the executor, it was still like probably three months ago. So the problem is like in this PR, I still run make the executor node in the primary position, but yeah, it's not our design in the long run, and Nazar has to refactor it into let the primary node to be the primary position, and the executor functionality will just be an optional component to the primary node. Yeah, that is everything has been done in the last week. Yeah, any questions, comments?
There was a discussion about verification for fraud proofs, I believe, in the runtime to move it into the client.
Oh, yeah. I forget that. Yeah. Vera was working on the focus runtime upgrade and found that that the new host function added for the fraud proof verification has a problem regarding the focus runtime upgrade. We have to remove the invocation of that host call from the runtime. Yeah, I have checked the focus runtime upgrade locally. It was worked pretty well. Yeah, with the removal of that invocation. Yeah.
Okay, and immediate plans for you for this week?
So for this week, I will continue the trusted executor authoring, and after that, I would like to debug the executor for node issue that I have mentioned before. I haven't figured out. In order to run the initial executor network properly, that is an issue we have to solve. So I would like to work on that after we have the trusted executor. Yeah.
Okay, makes sense to me. Any other questions from audience? And by the way, that problem with host call, I think that might be something that you Ozgun hit when you were trying to run it against the production. I'm not entirely sure, but it might be the case, potentially. Yeah, on the same note, Ozgun, what was happening on your side?
Not much, since my main focus is on Subspace desktop, but I have two small contributions. One of them is to your Docker documentation, Nazar. Reviewed the PR and tried myself and made contributions. The other one is I improved the README for slots library, so now there is testing and benching a guide in there. Aside from these basic documentation and README, I have no contribution to core protocol.
Okay, any blockers from the monorepo side that would be helpful for you to resolve?
Right now, I don't think so.
Okay. Other questions to Ozgun? No, all right. Ivan?
Yeah, let me share the screen. Can you see it?
It's loading. Yep, I can see it.
Great. So during the last week, I was asked to check the bug related to the syncing on the Windows. Yeah, there was one clue related to the multi-threaded server, which wasn't supported exactly on Windows. Yeah, but was supported on different platforms. So I dig into that and made a PR for the Dishonored PC servers. Yeah, of the parity. Yeah, just small PR with a cleanup code, which we had before the release of Tokyo 1.0. So yeah, not much to discuss here, I guess. The thing is, this bug which was in the Dishonored PC, it didn't influence like outside of the syncing on the Windows, which is unfortunate. Yeah. Also dig a bit into that, and it seems that the issue is in the block sync of the substrate somewhere, at least not in the bulk import side, which is on our side of the subspace. So yeah, I will dig a bit into that in the future. Yeah, also ask Nazar to dig into that. Yeah.
There's no change since yesterday on this topic.
No. I didn't have enough time for that. Yeah. I just Apart from that, since the last talk from yesterday, I set it up with Farmer for.
Sorry, Ivan. I want to talk about this issue for a moment. Nazar, have you had a chance to look into this at all yet?
Not yet.
Okay. How soon do we think we can start to resolve this? This is like a really big deal. We've got to make it a priority. Do you need Nazar's help on this, Ivan? Do you think you can dig into it a little bit more on your own?
Sure. Yeah. After this meeting, I will dig into that. Yeah.
If you can make this your #1 priority, this is a really, really big problem for our community right now.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. So apart from that, I was focusing last week on updating the block archiving and object mapping for the multi-farming, because back before those kind of PRs, we had an assumption, not the assumption, but we had the we had the issue that for each of the plotting and farming instance, we would have like separate archiving instance also. archiver instance, which was running in the background. Basically, he was doing like no distinct job, because this kind of logic, it could be extracted on top of the multi-farming. Like we could have a single instance of the archiver for each of those plotting and farming. Yeah, so that would optimize the workflow. So also the same thing goes for the object mapping. It could be also extracted, as we have the global object mapping for like all of the plots inside of the farmer. Yeah, I did 2 PRs with that. So basically, to take the vet, yeah, we discussed it a bit with Nazar here. Yeah, the first one didn't have like that good API. I did the second take also. Yeah, it had like a better API, but still lacked some of the issues. First of all, it didn't have like synchronization on top of the like archiver, I believe. Yeah, apart from that, Nazar dig into that sometime later. Yeah, he did another take of that. Yeah, I guess we could talk about it later. Yeah. Yeah. Also, yeah, I split the PR for the that PR which I was talking about before. I split it into the 2 also. But yeah, apart from that, I also fixed the issue related to the piece distance function. Basically, we had piece distance function which was XOR distance in our white paper, but we talked about it a bit with Nazar and decided to switch to like general addition subtraction distance, which is which would be also bidirectional. Yeah, but the main motivation behind that is that we would need to synchronize pieces from our DSN, and switching to this kind of distance would make our lives easier, because that would let us calculate the sectors. Basically, sectors are like some set of sequential pieces. For example, like the pieces which go from this piece to this piece. Yeah, and by having this distance, we would make our life easier to query the pieces from the farmer, not knowing only the farmer public key. Yeah, that's why we decided to switch to that. Yeah, but also let for some quirks and yeah, some general wrangling of the primitives and everything from our libraries. But yeah, overall, everything's working, everything's fine. Yeah. That's it for the progress from the last week. Yeah. Also, I was working on the build for RH64. Yeah, I believe I could make it. I could make it soon. Yeah, but yeah, I guess I could switch to the Windows Sync issue, so that it would be resolved soon. Yeah, that's it from my side. After that, I guess I can switch to help Nazar with the sync from the DSN for the farmers. Yeah.
Yeah, that piece distance thingy was one of the kind of requirements, and by having DSN and that thing, we should be able to start working on sync from other farmers.
Yeah. Basically, we discussed it with Nazar a bit. I thought that we could make it with the XOR distance. Yeah, but there is still some weird quirks with XOR maths, because yeah, it's also mixed with the like addition subtraction math, but it also uses XOR, which is not very intuitive for those kind of cases. So yeah.
Yeah, basically, querying those pieces will look kind of similar as search for tag in our commitments mechanically. We'll just like read a portion of the namespace. Any other questions to Ivan?
Yeah, Ivan, have you had any luck with doing a 1 terabyte plot test?
Yeah, I set it up yesterday. Yeah, I believe it synced around. It synced some small amount of pieces. Yeah, unfortunately, I thought it would sync everything from whole history till now. But yeah, I will dig into that also today.
Do you mean the node didn't sync all of the blocks?
Yeah.
Is it still in progress? It's just like over almost 200 gigabytes. Maybe it just takes time.
It actually it says that it's idle and it doesn't have peers, which is weird. Like I just looked into the logs.
Okay. I think it might be the case that your node was banned by the other node. I've seen that like once or twice. It's really not clear. There was an issue in Substrate that was closed and then reopened, and it's still reopened, and like no one seems to be working on it. So I would suggest you to wipe your node and try again. Just like there is some like combination of factors that when they align, like your node is blocked. And since we have just like 1 or 2 nodes on the network, there is no one else to sync from. So like on the real network, it's not a big deal. But for like these small networks where everyone behaves correctly, it just happens sometimes. I've seen it before.
Okay, yeah, I will wipe the node.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Okay, Ivan, when you have an update on that, can you drop an update or a message in the engineering chat and tag me? I'd like to get an update before the sync on Monday next week.
Sure, yeah, of course, yeah. I just want to clarify the setup. It will be like six replicas of 100 gigabytes each. Yeah, because we need some space for the node state. Yeah, it's also quite heavy.
Okay. The node state shouldn't be that much. Shouldn't.
One just doesn't have 2 terabytes of space to run everything at 1 terabyte capacity. So it will be like 600 gigabytes instead.
Oh, because it's still an archival node in this setting?
We can make it non-archival, but I don't think he has enough space to just run it in general, free space.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Well, how much space do you have, Ivan?
I have like near a terabyte here, but I want to dedicate like both this space for both node and farmer. Yeah, it's like 930 gigabytes or something. Yeah.
Okay.
What about what's?
Go ahead, Sam.
Now, what about the option of buying one for this? Because I think that's one of the.
Sure. Yeah, I will buy it today. Yeah. I just picked some models. Yeah, but I'm not sure which one to pick. I guess I could ask Nazar about that.
Don't overanalyze it. Just go for the cheapest, simplest, off-the-shelf one. And
Okay.
if it breaks on that, that means we need to change our code.
Yeah, but makes sense. Yeah.
I just put a link in the chat to the issue that I think is causing peers being banned. There is some analysis there.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Nazar, do you think it's worth pinging Santiago about this, or we shouldn't use our firepower?
No, I don't think Santiago will help here. It's something really like tricky and deep. Just like pushing someone will not help. Like someone really needs to sit and debug it. But it's like also kind of random, so there's no good clue at the core reason of that.
It could also be the libp2p underneath as well.
Something somewhere at some point goes wrong, and like I'm
Is
sure
it-
we'll figure it out at some point, but yeah.
Okay, back to this issue of the, if you've got roughly a terabyte, then I think you should just run it in full node mode, now that we have that support for that, and not run it in archival mode. There's no sense in wasting all that space if we already have that support in the configuration.
Okay, yeah. But that would also mean that, yeah, I would need to make some changes for Node, I believe, because we had
You
some
need to
breaking
specify
changes.
some flags. I think you should be able to run it with all chain spec. I think. Yeah, we can discuss it. If you have problems, we can discuss it.
Because I tried it, the most recent Node yesterday, yeah, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I think we can patch it and make it work just for this experiment.
Okay.
Yeah, you should. I mean, there should just be like the head of the feeds, which should be like less than a megabyte, and then maybe some balances, and that's it. So there should be almost zero state for the chain. Should just be the BST overhead that you have, which is like 1%. So you should be able to get like 95+%, maybe 99% of the storage that you have if you run it in full node mode.
Yeah, but basically, yeah, make it like free more replicas, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if you can make debugging the Windows issue your priority, and then getting this benching done, that's obviously going to take some time. So you're just going to have to set that up, and it's just going to have to run in the background for a while and monitor it. But a lot of this other stuff around optimizations and you know, it's great if we can have, you know, it in Raspberry Pi. That's definitely something that's on our roadmap. But these other issues are much more critical.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, Ved, it's your turn.
On the protocol side, this is only one thing that I've worked on, that is solution range adjustment. Instead of being that behind the flag, we've put it behind a storage call, so that the root user can enable it after we see the chain first. Nothing much apart from that. Last week on the protocol changes. This week I had a chance to look at the slot duration, Jeremiah. From my understanding at the moment, currently the slot worker takes in a duration of 1 second between the slots. So I think we can even bring it down to 500 milliseconds. I don't think that it would give us any better, quicker blocks. The other thing that we could do is, I haven't had a chance to test out some theories. The other thing we could look at is increasing the initial solution range, or increasing the slot probability. Right now it's 1/6. Maybe we can bring it up by like 1/3 or something. Maybe that could, since the solution won't be changed from the initial one, so maybe we'll have much more, farmers will have much more faster way to fetch solutions or produce blocks.
Okay, so that's exactly why you had that change that limits updates of the solution range. So it starts with the assumption that the size of the blockchain history is just one segment. But as we accumulate more and more segments, the actual size increases, but the difficulty stays the same. So effectively, we are solving every slot. So we are already solving every single second with that patch. We cannot like go beyond that if you don't decrease the slot time.
Yeah, and no, I'm talking about the initial, like before we enable that adjustment, like if you want to even make the blocks even faster, increasing the solution range also increases the blocks faster. I mean, I'm not sure if that would be any practical improvements there. Just a hunch. I still want to try out running a node with the latest changes that we have gotten. Just an idea there. Not sure if I'm on the right path though.
Wait, but it will not solve more often than one slot.
Yeah, I think maybe there's some confusion. So the setup that we're running it in is this like trusted single node setup. So there's no notion of a network. So it's just solving everything locally. Basically, you know, so there's the slot, which is 1 second, which is configurable, at least from initial settings. And there's a challenge every slot, which has a difficulty, right? And right now that difficulty is if you have one piece, like at initiation, if you have one piece, then you're always going to solve. So it's guaranteed every slot that you're going to solve, and then that solution range doesn't update until we introduce this this extrinsic to flip it on. So we can't go below one slot, but we can make the slot faster. So right now it's 1 second, but we can make it like 100 milliseconds. It's actually limited by like the disk read-write access more than
Or
it
CPU.
Or CPU,
Yeah,
or
or
CPU,
CPU.
but there's no network, and it could probably even be like maybe 25 milliseconds, but 100 milliseconds
No,
seems
I
to
think
give us.
at 100 milliseconds it doesn't manage to create block every time.
Yeah,
So it's
we
like
will
about the
end
limit.
up, yeah, we'll fail at the inheritance itself. We won't even end up like finishing it up. So like that's that. So yeah,
Why?
because the initial inherents that we need to create for every block might take enough time to actually, like, the timestamp is there. We have some more inherents coming from the runtime. Again, this is just an assumption. We can try out. We can make it 100 milliseconds and start producing blocks with a new node.
Which inherent would be like? Is there some long-running async process that is part of inherence?
I think we
Ideally,
only
no.
make one query to the runtime state. And that is also can be avoided. It's just the way that C consensus slots is written. It gives you parent hash, but we need the whole parent header. So we need to like query it again, even though it was just queried before that, before the call. I may change that in Substrate. Otherwise, it's like one more lock on the mutex, and that's it. So it shouldn't take that much. But at least in debug mode, it was not super fast when I was testing it. So 100 milliseconds was about the limit.
We can try it. I can try out 100 milliseconds and running a local testnet on a production binary and see if that actually does. Like the other thing that I was looking at, apart from reducing the solution range, I saw the slot probability is 1/6. That is once every 6 slots is what we are looking at. I was hoping like we could increase the slot probability by like to 1/3. That would expand the solution range in which it doesn't make any practical.
That doesn't matter. That's only if you have a difficulty adjustment. So the slot probability is basically already 1 out of 1 with a one piece difficulty.
Okay. I thought we are also scoping at like within that piece. Okay, and then it doesn't make sense. Then we have to look at reducing the slot duration and try out on the production binary.
Yeah. So my concern there is that if we increase or decrease the slot duration, whether we can actually increase it back. Because right now, I believe there are comments in the code that say it's not upgradable. I'm just wondering if we can actually do that change.
We can do it, but we have to fork the slot worker. The slot worker gets a slot duration through the config at the time of initiation. So we would have to tap into the runtime within the slot worker loop to actually get the slot duration when the runtime happens, rather than taking it as a config parameter. I think that's coming from Subspace link, I guess. So like that's something that we could look at, like fork the slot worker and ensure that the slot worker gets.
Yeah, I think it's C consensus slots. Maybe look into it whether we can extend it to allow update of that interval in the runtime. So we can
update of the interval in the runtime can be done. Like we just need to in the runtime we can update the slot duration.
Oh, I mean for that thing to call into runtime and check what is the current slot duration, and if it changes, it will change itself as well.
Yeah, we would have to tap into the system code, maybe get a hook there when runtime happens, and then during that loop we update the slot duration from the old one to the new one. So that's one way that we can look at. Then the loop should ideally continue and wait that specific duration, whatever the new updated one, before it works on a new slot. So that's one way we could tap into it without that, but that requires us making or extending some changes to the slot worker.
So we'd have to submit a PR to parity to update it.
Yeah,
that would be the ideal route, other than forking it.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'll see how we can tap. Like the whole idea is to like get some hook when the runtime upgrade happens, so that we can tap into it again. So let me see how we can do that, and then maybe we can give a PR. I'm not sure how reciprocated they'll be, but we can try. Yeah,
there are some things like they send you, I believe, epoch parameter always, even though it's not an epoch-based consensus that we have. So we just like ignore it. So maybe we can make it a little bit more generic for everyone involved.
Yeah, so we have to look into that. But that's the current idea, though. Just to add more information from yesterday.
Would it be valuable to start a discussion on this first to try to build a little bit of consensus and prep them before submitting this PR to them? Has that helped with some of the other PRs we've done, Nazar?
I think I was starting some of the bigger discussions, but generally it helps.
Yeah. So in that sense, like, let me see how we can make those changes and maybe get some idea what changes we're introducing, and then maybe start from there, see how well they reciprocate that, and then adjust. But I'll start some discussion around it this week in the Subspace Builders channel, see if they talk something about it.
Well, there's also this GitHub discussions that they have for Substrate that Nazar started a few discussions on.
Yeah.
And you could do, like, they always come, when we submit these PRs, they always come back to like, what problem is this solving? Like, why do you want to change our code? It's not always clear to them from the get-go. And so if you start just from the problem of like, hey, we're trying to archive .sama, which is like 300 gigabytes, like we're trying to help you, basically. But that takes 3 weeks for us to bootstrap our node at a 1 second block time. So we want to have like, this faster block time, but it's hard coded and we'd like to update it. So, kind of like walk the dog for them and then be like, and this is what we're thinking, but how do you guys think we should do this? And then you can just like create the PR off of that and like link to the discussion when you submit the PR. And then they're not like, what the hell is this when they see it?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah. So will that still be under Builders channel though, Jeremiah, or is it somewhere else?
Oh, in Substrate repository, they have like issues, pull requests, and discussions. In discussions, there is a type of discussion which is idea, and you can like submit, we want to modify the slot worker.
Okay.
This is why we need it, and so on.
Okay, cool. I'll do that. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, apart from that, yeah, I think nothing on the protocol side, more on the runtime side.
Okay, and when you test that VED, just make sure that you're using an SSD and not an HDD
Yeah.
as well.
I'm gonna run it on my Mac, so
okay,
I'll just test it there.
And then Sam as well. Whenever we set up the infrastructure for that, or as as we bring chainops into this later, we want to make sure that the state database is actually a solid state drive. That was not actually always the case in the past when some of these things were configured. They weren't set up with the right kind of storage. And the parity DB is the default now, right? Nazar, it's not using RocksDB anymore.
It might be in the very latest main that we have when we upgraded Substrate. I need to check. They even renamed it from ParityDB Experimental to just ParityDB, I believe. It is already used by default in Subspace Desktop. I don't think it was default. No, it wasn't default in the latest snapshot. I need to check about the latest main.
Yeah. My assumption is that the reads to the state database are probably going to be the bottleneck in the block production. That's probably going to be the longest async process that we're going to see.
It does have some caching though, so it might help. I don't know.
Okay. So you're working on that, and everything for feeds validation is done. We're just waiting on Serge to get those changes pushed into the relayer code.
Yeah. That, and I'm also working on the content addressable. That again, we do not have to push it for the first upgrade, but that's just something that I'm working in parallel so that we can move things on that end as well. For that, there won't be any changes on the relayer for Sergey to do. It's everything is within the runtime implementation, so we should be fine on that as well.
Okay, cool. So whenever Serge has those changes ready, then we can start doing the upgrade process on the testnet. Okay. And when are we going to do our first forkless runtime upgrade on FarmNet?
Okay, so we should ideally be ready by Friday. Maybe Nazar, you could help me get started on this, like on at least on the ops side. I was thinking a bit more on the pipeline for the GitHub Actions to check the spec bump at least. I was thinking to actually have a script that runs on every tag, since we seem to be tagging every releases. So That's something that I've thought about, but apart from that, we still have to figure out how to get the WASM or how to push the WASM into GitHub assets as part of the snapshot. Should be pretty straightforward change, and then taking that WASM and doing it, upgrading it on a farmnet. I do hope we use some of the existing tools though. There is a SR tool that Parity uses very much for these reproducible WASM builds. Maybe we can add that into our pipeline, but I don't know. Like for the first one, I'm not sure if we should go to that extent. It's just some ideas, but don't get scared. But we don't want to be there over a period of time.
Can you link it in the engineer? Thanks for the Ansible build stuff. Can you please link that in the engineering chat?
Oh, this is not the Ansible one, Samuel. This is the SR tool that builds the WASM for our runtime upgrades for anyone to verify the WASM builds that we do.
Mm-hmm. Is that the thing where they did the presentation on like the mixer or whatever? Like what do they call it? The big machine that like takes the WASM code and always gets the right hash out or something?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not done by Parity, it's done by one of the guy inside Parity, Chef Dor. He hosts it on GitLab. So do a quick search on SR tool, Samuel. SR tool.
Can you just post it in the engineering chat?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, the idea there is that if you have the same Rust compiler version and the same operating system, it should produce the same result. But like in CI, GitHub can install some packages, uninstall some packages. It can be different every day, even if you install the same Rust. So if you like run a container, which is always the same, it will always produce the same WASM, so everyone can verify it.
And also they have this nice desktop app, I believe, that anyone can pull down and run and check if the proposed one is same as the one that they are seeing. But yeah, I'll post it on engineering chat, Samuel.
Yeah, I think for the initial run through, that's probably a little bit overkill, but it is definitely something we want to have in our roadmap to get to. Because right now it's already trusted, right? Because we're the only ones that can update it. But once we start going to on-chain governance, we definitely need something like that.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, awesome. Sounds great, Ed.
All right, let me share my screen then. I had some time to work on pull requests and code changes last week. Okay, you should be able to see it. So the first one, as Ivan said, I had another take on the things that he worked on. The gist of it is basically in the last commit, after all the refactoring prior to that. The core idea is that instead of plotting process as such, we just have like a few function calls. So we don't need the plotting process as such. We have archiving process instead. Temporary, it takes one plot instance, which it uses to track what is the last archived segment, I believe. And then it has some global things to work on. And after that, it basically has this callback function that is called every time we have a set of pieces that needs to be plotted. And we basically plot those pieces on every single plot that we have. So we take the callbacks. Each callback corresponds to a function that calls a corresponding plot. So we have multiple of those plots in here. I believe it's somewhere here. Oh yeah, here. So we basically have a bunch of plots, individual ones, and then we have codecs for every one of them and commitments corresponding to them. And we basically call this function. So this function basically replaces the plotting process we had before. And then when we have a new segment, we basically plot that segment on every single plot in parallel, and that's basically it. So we have one archiving process at the very top in the multi-farming, and we don't have individual archiving in separate instances. And this will change a little bit in the upcoming pull requests, one of which is already merged.
Quick question, Nazar.
Yep.
When we're doing the parallel plotting, is that the same piece in each plot or different pieces to each plot?
It's a segment into each plot. So if you have 5 plots and 256 pieces, those 256 pieces go to each of 5 plots.
What if the history is larger than the plot size?
We are doing it one segment at a time right now.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead.
Pieces will be evicted. We have like embedded piece eviction inside of a plot.
Yeah.
So everything will be fine.
Plot will just ignore
Okay.
pieces that doesn't belong to it.
Or
Okay,
replace, yeah.
So it's basically streaming it to the sort of plot, and the plot is just looking, and then the plot determines if it's part of the its sector or subsector or not. Okay, got it.
That's how it is right now.
Got it.
And there is like a few to-dos, basically upcoming things that need to be done. One of the things is we have right now, if you look into here, we have a few of these vectors. We have plots, we have codecs, and we have commitments in Farmix, which basically all belong like to one plot. So one plot has a codec with identity and has some commitments to it, and farming can be done on that plot, right? So they're kind of like related, but right now they're just in different vectors. So one of the upcoming changes that would be nice to have, but not required, to combine them in some kind of abstraction. So you have this like wrapper basically around everything related to one plot. So instead of like zipping a bunch of different vectors here, we can basically iterate over this like abstraction and say like, please abstraction plot this. I don't care how. So that would be one potential change. Then plot, every plot still has this last root block, but as I showed, we only really care about the first one. Others are kind of like redundant. This is the old functionality we no longer need. And it's gone actually in one of the upcoming pull requests because we stop archiving on the farmer entirely. And the same about like public key. It should eventually be removed from the plot. It should be just part of that like bigger abstraction that encapsulates both plot and codec and identity. Yeah. So that's basically the like a little bit big pull request that optimizes efficiency on the farmer for the most part. Doesn't really bring any new functionality as such. Any other questions about this part? All right. This is a simple one, just docs, how you can build it from source. There is one small trick that we need to download the chain spec from a particular snapshot. Otherwise, it will not build the proper binary. That's something that people were missing. Just a few lines of bash, and you can build your own binary for whatever platform you care about, like ARM. And then there was upgrade to Substrate latest snapshot. It's like over a month newer than the previous one. Nothing particularly amazing here. There were a few changes notable. One thing as I was reviewing updates to comments, I noticed that there is this method on the data structure which is responsible for verifying inherence or like providing inherence in the palette. And there is actually a method that you can implement. You don't have to, but you can implement whether inherence are actually required for a particular block. And we have inherent data available, so we can actually check. So if there is something some root blocks in it, we expect that we should have a corresponding inherent. That's why we return an error if it's not the case. Otherwise, there was an update related to the CLI, where they've actually added a few benchmarking things regarding block and storage and some overhead for block creation. Overhead required some more changes and like whole modules included. I think they will refactor something, so I omitted it for now. But we can like benchmark palettes, blocks, and storages in a new way. Other than that, it's like simple cargo updates for the most part, so nothing particularly interesting. That is, by the way, if you are using the latest one, this can potentially be used to figure out why Windows is slower than other operating systems. Maybe some of these things will show significant difference. Then there was 2 refactorings for nodes. Let me check. Yeah, basically this is a small refactoring to make things a little bit simpler. We had this like intermediate function, this one, I believe, that had like a lot of generics, but we really didn't need many of those generics. And in some cases, it was too specific. So like it was, instead of relying on some runtime APIs that we actually care about, it was relying on the whole particular instantiation, and we had to specify a whole bunch of these things. So basically removed unnecessary generics, killed some of these functions, and just made it a little bit simpler, which was necessary for some of the upcoming changes. And then there was this Cirrus client service crate, which was basically starting executor as far as I'm concerned. So I just moved executor creation into where those functions were called and removed the whole crate as such. So we no longer have it. We will probably have Cirrus service, just like we have Subspace service, but it will be like a different kind of crate. Because we don't really need Node as such at this point with some of the newer pull requests. So just some refactoring. And then another refactoring on top of that, I just wanted to split it separately. And yeah, the gist of it is the following, like the goal kind of. We have Subspace node, which now starts both executor and regular node as Lucien did in his changes. But it was done with this check. So we were checking whether we have some arguments for the secondary chain to start. If so, then we need to start it. Otherwise, we just start the old way. And what I did here is I basically changed it. I think it would be easier to look at it this way. I changed it such that we always start with the regular mode, just like before. And then we are starting the primary node, just like before. However, we've actually decoupled the network starter, so we don't start the networking, but everything else is already prepared. And then we check whether we actually have some arguments to start secondary node. If so, then we optionally start it. So this is basically optional component of the primary node at this point. And after that, we start the primary node networking and we start the whole thing. So if we don't run secondary node, this is basically skip this branch, and this will be false. So we don't force stop notification unless you are already in authority mode. Otherwise, we start this optional component, and that basically simplifies the interaction and simplifies some of the upcoming changes, which I had to do in one place and not multiple places after these changes. And again, a little bit less code as a result. Yeah. And after that, basically many of those changes were done in order to make this pull request possible, both on the farmer side and on the node refactoring side. The gist of it is that we are now waiting for farmer to consume pieces that are archived by the node, and we don't archive pieces separately on the farmer anymore. So when we're going into RPC, SC consensus subspace RPC, we have this new RPC endpoint. Actually, it's not the new one. We just didn't use it before. We can subscribe to archived segments. I've just added a new call which acknowledges that some segment was received. So basically, farmer needs to call back and say, I received that segment. Please send me the next one. Unless farmer sends that, node will wait and try again and again and again. So it basically will wait for farmer to connect such that farmer doesn't skip any segments. Again, this is like temporary thing. We will probably get rid of all of this once we have sync from DSN. But right now, this is the temporary workaround that will allow us to make the node a full node instead of archival. So basically, we have this new method. And then on the farmer side, we had that big archiving thingy. We don't really have it anymore. Farming, archiving. So majority of this file is actually gone. What we had before, we had a new head subscription in here. We were subscribing to new blocks, and then we were trying to archive those blocks one by one, and then we were producing segments, and those segments were archived and plotted by farmers. Now we subscribe to the segments themselves, so we don't need to actually request blocks. We don't need to wait for them, and the whole thing is much simpler. I can probably open it separately to show it. So here we have subscription to segments. In here we are waiting for either segment to arrive, or this is just a pain to figure out whether the RPC has stuck, and we need to crash Farmer to restart it again. This is the bug in Substrate that will get resolved with the switch to the new JSON RPC library. And this is the fact whether the plotting or archiving instance was dropped, so we need to stop doing anything. So if we receive new segment, we basically send it over the channel, and then we wait for acknowledgement to arrive back in here, and then we notify the node that we've done it. And in here we are waiting for segments instead of archiving them, so it's much simpler. So overall, it's just like less than 300 lines file, and before it was I don't know, it was like maybe 500-600 lines. It was much bigger. So with this change, you can actually specify unsafe pruning on the validator or like block authoring node in Substrate, and you can specify how many blocks you want to store, how many blocks worth of state you want to store, and it will actually become a full node instead of archival, and it will work just fine. Because we no longer request from the farmer arbitrary block once we have a notification. We already receive archived blocks, so we don't need to do that. And that's why node and farmer are coupled, and they work fine even in full mode instead of archival. In the future, this archiving process will be gone and will be replaced with the process that requests segments from DSN. That's why it's partially refactored, not fully refactored, because it will be gone anyway. I hope it makes sense. Any questions about this?
Yeah, thanks for getting this done, Nazar. This is a huge milestone, and I can't wait till we can roll this out. You had told me that there were some additional steps that we need to do before we can announce this. Can you go through those again?
Yeah, so before we can actually announce it, we need to issue a new snapshot. So people can actually go and download it. And along with the snapshot, we will update documentation to add like those 3 flags. Before we can do that snapshot, ideally we would deploy a runtime upgrade. So I'll be looking into changing a little bit how we actually build things, such that we have like a file in the repository with the change spec that we need to include, because we are like a little bit more stable right now than we were before, such that when we want, I think it's development, when we want to build it from source, I'm not sure which file it is, that pull request I showed. Build from source. Which file is it? It's development. Yeah, okay, it's in Farming. So instead of downloading this change spec, it will be already in the repository. So instead of specifying this feature, we'll just cargo build, and it will just build the correct thing. And additional thing is to update CI so we can actually produce change specs, or not change specs, produce WASM blobs for the runtime. So we'll just have to figure out those 2 things with WAD and do runtime upgrade and then release a snapshot. So we're like almost there. We just need to figure out logistics around those things because we've never done it before.
Okay. Yeah, if you can make that your priority this week to work with Ed and try to get that resolved so we can get this deployed. And you'll be working on the documentation updates as well. Yeah,
just a few lines. It's nothing major.
And that will carry through into the Docker build as well?
Yeah.
The Docker image? Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then is there anything special we need to do to carry that forward into the desktop app?
Well, we need to specify those same parameters. Right now, we are specifying that we want to store all of the blocks, but we'll change that to not store all of the blocks, and that's basically it.
Okay. So that should be a fairly trivial fix for you, Oscar, or improvement.
Yeah.
And with runtime upgrade, what's nice is that people don't actually need to rush and like reformat everything. The old clients will continue to work the way they did. They will run archival nodes. The new clients will be able to restart in the new way. So it's not like a major breaking change. It's just nice to have if you like want to store more pieces and less of the history of the blockchain. This is what you kind of have to do. But it will not be something that will split the network and leave previous users behind in like a separate fork. Yeah, and I've also added Docker farming instructions. Just a simple Docker compose and a bunch of comments.
And will we be releasing those changes in parallel with the ability to do multi-replica farming?
Yeah. Actually, already, if you build it from main, the farmer requires you to specify how much space you want to allocate. So it's already there, just not part of the latest snapshot. Still be automatically included.
Okay, so whenever we get that ready, we need to make sure that we coordinate with Wei and Justin to have an announcement.
Yeah,
about
that's a
that
big,
as well.
that's a big thing.
Yeah, because everybody's going to want to replot at that point, you know, to take advantage of all the space they have and that they don't have to store the archival history anymore.
Absolutely.
That'll be like a huge change in the whole network composition and the block reward frequency. Okay, and
yeah,
what are you like? What is your expectation or your estimate right now of like when all those, you know, multi-replica farming and the ability to not run an archival node can actually be deployed and we can notify the community?
I really hope we can finalize everything and maybe even deploy this week. I surely hope we have runtime upgrade this week, and then we can start testing the like the actual multi-farming and stuff on our side. And when we think it's ready, whether it's desktop application or CLI or both, we can announce it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're going to need to do a little bit more deliberate testing with this versus just pushing it out to the users and seeing what happens.
Yeah, and we can even start it from desktop application. Like we can upgrade that one first, as long as we have runtime upgrade.
Sorry, I gotta go.
Okay, I think this is all from my side, unless you have any other questions.
Yeah, I had a quick one related to the pushing the farmer to the node side. Yeah, I just want to ask that I've seen that the constant, which was related to the confirmation depth, it was removed. So yeah, I just thought like how would
From RPC?
Yeah. Like how everything will behave, like both node and farmer, in the case of like network reorg. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter because basically the constant was coming from node, such that farmer can instantiate archiving because it needs to know what blocks needs to be archived, like at which depth. But now blocks are archived on the node, so farmer doesn't really care about that constant anymore. As long as node behaves correctly and sends correct pieces in already archived form, it should work just fine.
Oh, so it was pushed to the node also. Okay, yeah.
Some other constants are still necessary, but these in particular are not. So.
Yeah. I just missed that part from the node. Yeah, thanks a lot.
And another question I had, Nazar. So whenever we switch from syncing from the embedded client or the embedded node with the farmer to syncing from the DSN, will we be able to request the to sync each of the plots individually, or will there just be like a global notion of sync and then those segments go to the plots after they're retrieved from the network? Since each plot might need like different segments or different pieces that it's interested in.
Yeah, I think it will be for every plot individually, because they will supposedly be in different parts of the like namespace on the ring. and they will have to have fairly different set of pieces.
Okay, that's what I thought too. Okay. Are you finished with your update, Nizar?
Yeah.
Okay, just one. I just want to talk about the Windows bug a little bit. Have we tested, or have we confirmed that if we run like just any parachain or any substrate, like non-subspace change node, that we get the same problem, that Windows Sync is incredibly slow, or that it's because something that we've introduced or extended in Subspace that's causing this on Windows?
I think
that would be a good way to test out.
no, but if it was a Windows thing, I think the parity at a parity level would be a lot higher. If it was a general substrate,
I don't think anyone in the right mind runs validators on Windows.
Exactly.
Right.
So no one really cares whether it works at all.
The thing
Except
is,
like developer for development purposes, and then performance doesn't really matter.
yeah, and if you look there, like standard hardware that they recommend, it's like such a beefy machine. I don't think you'll even find beefy machines in Windows that big. So doesn't make any sense for them to actually focus on it. But we can definitely try to run our template there, see if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sure they will not be opposed to optimize something, but they will definitely not spend much resources figuring it out on their own, because validators are running on the servers 24/7. It's not really for Windows desktop environment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking to simplify this debugging, if we just like remove subspace from the equation and just try to understand if it's a substrate problem, it might make it easier. So we just like run like a full client of some small parachain, for example, or like state mine, for example. I think that's probably one of the simplest parachains out there. Does that work? Or actually, probably don't want to do parachain. We want to do a relay chain, so it's a solo
Substrate
chain.
template, substrate node template.
Yeah,
after
there
the
you
box.
go. Substrate node template. And then after that, then maybe we should even not even run like an authority node of subspace, but just like a full node of subspace to see if we can just sync that. And then we can like run it with a farmer in parallel. But right now there's like so much going on, it's really hard to even identify what the source of the problem is.
Yeah.
Quick question. Have we tried running Docker based on our current Ubuntu one in Windows and see if that helped it maybe?
We can try, but regardless of what conclusion is, it's not something we would recommend users to do, especially when they're running like desktop application. We will not package Docker inside of desktop applications just to
All
run.
right, I just want to see if that is the core Windows problem or it's just a subset problem.
Now we're talking about Windows. Like there was a user that was running Windows subsystem, and I wasn't even sure where to even start, because like Windows subsystem for Linux has its own issues that I'm not sure if it's even something we want to even start to surface.
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a good idea. Not thinking outside the box there, but probably not going to work.
Well, Docker is written in Go, so you should be able to like just package the binary.
But yeah, but let's not spend time there. Okay.
Okay, that was it. Thanks.
Okay, do we have anything else we want to discuss before we close the recording?
Sam, do you have any updates you want to give, or do you want to cover anything about the support workflow, or would you rather do that off the recording?
After the recording.
Okay, thanks everyone for watching YouTube then, and we'll see you next week.